Welcome to the Start Something Show. Join world-renowned experts, change agents, and everyday folks who have done the amazing. All here to help you start something incredible. Now it's time to step out, live your perfect day, and create a legacy with your host, Tina Dietz.
Yes, it is that time again, Superstarters. This is Tina Dietz, and welcome to the Start Something Show. I've got my radio voice on just for you, and today we're going to be welcoming one of the world's top success coaches, Raymond to the show. But before we get to that, I have a tech tip for you. You can hashtag Superstarter Tech Tip with your tech tips for us here at the Start Something Show. And if we choose yours, we'll give you a shout out on the air. And maybe some other goodies too. We'll just have to see about that. Our tech tip this month, this is another personal one for me, of course, and that is for using something called Google Voice. This goes back to the travel that I'm always talking about. When we're traveling from country to country, you end up with some issues with phone numbers. Yes, you can use a bunch of paid services to handle your calls, but Google Voice is free, which is one of the reasons that I have stayed with it as long as I have. One of the things I love about the whole Google suite, I am a bit of a Google evangelist, is that everything integrates together. So when I'm traveling in Costa Rica, I can use the Google Voice app on my phone to text internationally, to keep track up with people, and I can also integrate it either with my Gmail or with Google Hangouts to be able to make international calls from other countries for free, which is not something that you can do with Skype. So check out the Google Voice app and also check out Google Voice on your desktop and see if it's a good solution for you to handle having a separate business phone number as well as a phone number that you can then use internationally and still have a U.S. presence if you're in the U.S., even if you are not currently on United States soil. So that's our tech tip of the month. Also today, before we get talking with Raymond, I need to take a moment and do a huge acknowledgement. I have been working with the folks at Admin Solutions and specifically the owner, Charity Sackman, who's basically saved my life when it came to starting the Start Something website and getting things going. I don't think there's ever been a website that's been built that has gone smoothly. It doesn't seem to be the way things go. But I've been working with Admin Solutions for a while now, and I need to let folks know about the fantastic owner, Charity Sackman, and the services they provide. So not only do they help out with websites, but they're probably the most diverse virtual admin solutions team that I've ever come across. So everything from helping out with strategy to incredible, beautiful graphic design to managing projects for working with podcast artwork and other kinds of artwork, all kinds of flyers, posters, logos, you name it. And also the day-to-day work that you need done in your business as some help with an admin and project management. They really can handle it all. So go ahead and check out Admin Solutions website, tryadminsolutions.com. Talk to Charity Sackman and her team. They've done a really wonderful job for us, and I just want to pay it forward. Today on the show, Superstarters, we have Raymond. Raymond is a New York Times top 10 best-selling author and an internationally renowned thought leader and success coach. You can find out all about him at aaron.com. He has committed his life to teaching you how to dramatically change your life for the better, and he is one of the most sought-after speakers in the world. Raymond is one of the world's most respected authorities on marketing, branding, and business building, and his students have generated millions and millions of dollars. He is the author of 8 best-selling books, including Branding Small Business for Dummies and 2 books in the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. Raymond, thanks for starting something with me today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on today. Now, we always like to start with kind of going back to the beginning, as far back as you'd kind of like to go, we're inspiring our tribe here to get going and get started. Take us back to when you were first starting something. What were some of your first steps?
Well, the strange thing is I'm a math genius, And I would get never under 90 or 95% on any math test I ever did anywhere through high school. So I studied pure math and physics, graduated as a physicist, and got hired at one of the highest salaries that my employer ever offered a brand new student graduating. And so I thought, man, I'm off. I've made it. This is going to be a good life. And after a year and a half, I got bored, and I quit my promising job and started a completely unrelated business, soft drink manufacturing.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Okay.
And when that failed, I went back to math, paid off my debt in a salary job, got bored, quit, and started a chain of women's weight reducing salons. When that failed, I ran back to math, got a salary job, and paid off my debt, got bored, quit, and started a business importing foreign sports cars. And I yo-yoed back and forth, each time starting a different business, a private eye company, a cosmetics distributing company. I mean, every time I started these weirdly different businesses, and they all failed. And finally, at age 39, I gave up. I was 50 pounds overweight, so nutritionally I had no idea what was going on. I was fired, so vocationally I had no idea what was going on. I was $100,000 in debt, so financially I had no idea what was going on. My wife was so upset at me that she fired me, so matrimonially I had no idea what was going on. In no area of my life was I succeeding. I was an overweight, depressed, total 39-year-old life loser. And at that point, I suddenly realized I've been in charge of my life. And the reason I'm in charge is because I'm so smart, because I'm a math genius. But it's not working. Every single area of my life is a catastrophe. I don't mean average or weak. I mean a catastrophe. And I decided I shouldn't be in charge, which was a really tough decision because I'm so smart. But the results are that I was so dumb and I couldn't figure it out. And by age 39, all my stupid friends were rich and all my brilliant friends were broke. They were all professors at university. And
isn't that the weirdest thing?
It is. And I finally realized that IQ has nothing to do with it. Knowledge of mathematics, unfortunately, has nothing to do with getting rich. I was hoping that would be it. And trying different entrepreneurial ventures has nothing to do with it. I started realizing there was something I didn't know that I'd better learn. And I hired a coach, and he told me that the reason I'm struggling is because I'm not branded. I don't stand out in any way. I'm just completely average. That hurt me until he said that 97% of people in the developed world are in the sea of sameness. They're completely nondescript. They're not known by anybody except their family and a few friends. But they don't have any credibility. They don't have any branding. They don't stand out in any way. They're just kind of average. Not to them. Each person knows in himself why he's good. But to the rest of the world, you look kind of average. And an example would be, let's say there's a party and somebody says in a loud voice, I'm thinking of selling my home. And within earshot, there are 10 realtors, let's say. So they all run up to this person and say, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me. But they all look the same to the person thinking of selling their home. But each realtor knows what their area of specialty is. But to the person listing their home, they all look the same. But if one of them said, I wrote the book on selling your home fast, for example, then of the 10 possible realtors, how could that person choose somebody except the person who wrote the book on how to sell your home fast? And so what he said to me is, you have to write a book. And I said, what will I write a book on? How to be a 39-year-old life loser, 7 easy techniques? It's crazy. But
that might sell.
I know a lot of people are in that situation.
Yeah, really.
But I had made a lot of money in real estate, which I'd lost in a divorce, but I still knew how to make money in real estate. And so I wrote a book on real estate. And within 1 year, from age 39 to age 40, I got out of $100,000 of debt. And in 1 more year, from age 40 to age 41, I became a millionaire and I've never looked back. And now that's roughly what I earn every single year. And why? Because I stand out, not because I'm boasting about myself, but because I'm branded. People who are branded make a lot of money, and money just comes to them effortlessly. People who are not branded, we're talking about 97% of the population, as I just mentioned to you, struggle for every buck, struggle for every yen, struggle for every pound, struggle for every franc. That's the problem. When you're not branded, you've got to compete anonymously in the sea of sameness with lots of other sea of sameness people, and you all look the same. If you're thinking of buying a car, there's 10,000 car salesmen. Who should you pick? If you got a leak in your basement, every plumber seems to be the same to you. Everybody's in the sea of sameness. All dentists look the same. And when you stand out through some way by distinguishing yourself in some way, then money comes to you. People are eagerly looking for specialness.
That's very, very true. We all want to be special, and we all want to be around something that's special.
Exactly.
I want to go a little bit deeper into this area of branding because you have such a deep knowledge and you train so much on this topic, and it's an area that people are just so freaking confused about. Now, when you say, be branding, you're talking about standing out from the crowd. Do people actually have to be an entrepreneur in order to brand themselves?
No. Let's give an example of a client of mine. I'll call her Mary. And she works in the marketing department of a very large company, like a Procter & Gamble kind of company. And she attended one of my classes, decided to brand herself. The technique she decided to use was to write a book. And I help people write books and have it published in as little as 10 weeks. Write it and have it published and holding their physical book in their hand in 10 weeks.
Oh, that would be glorious.
Yeah, and she put on her Facebook page that she's writing a book on marketing. She didn't have the title yet. She hadn't even started writing it yet. But she was so happy that she was going to go through this process with me that she put it on her Facebook page. That's all she did, just for no other reason but to tell her friends and because she's so happy. The next day she gets a phone call from a recruiter saying, "Hi, I represent a company that is your employer's major competitor, and as you know, we are in the next office building over to you. So we're 5 feet away from you. And it's now 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I'll meet you at noon in 2 hours at the restaurant on the main floor of your building. Tell me your salary and add $20,000 to it and start working next door tomorrow morning." That's how fast it works. Now, here's the funny thing. Nobody asked her if she was any good. Nobody asked her if she's had lots of marketing successes. Nobody asked her. They just wanted her because she's writing a book on marketing. And I can imagine the recruiter saying to his client company, "You've asked me to find somebody with 8 years experience in marketing, and I found someone right next door, and she's writing a book on marketing." And they probably said, "Oh, my God, grab her. We'll even pay more for her." But they probably never said, "Is she any good?" And I'm not saying you should try to cover up that you're not good by writing a book. I'm not saying
that would be pretty hard to do, actually. And having an idea of what goes into writing a book, I think that would be a difficult prospect.
Right, but some people misinterpret what I'm saying, and so I want to be really clear. When you put your ideas in order in a book, you blow people away. You really blow people away. And so you asked, do you have to be an entrepreneur? There's an example of an employee getting a $20,000 signing on bonus and just turning left instead of right when she gets off the bus in order to go to work. That's all it was.
So do you think that it is necessary? Now, the writing books and having books published has become something in the last several years that has become obviously a very popular technique because it is so highly effective. Do you think that at this point, now that people kind of have an idea of how to, quote unquote, play the game on Amazon and become a bestseller either internationally or domestically, do you think that it's becoming harder for people to stand out using a book, or the same, or is it becoming easier?
The idea of pumping yourself up to number one on Amazon, it's easy. I'll reveal the secret. Amazon every hour lists who's in the top 10 in your particular category. And the categories are really, really specific. Amazon recognizes tens of thousands of categories. And so if you tell 5 of your friends to buy your book at 4 a.m., where no one else is buying books except maybe somebody very far away in another time zone, then you'll probably be in the top 10, and you take a screenshot and you can say top 10 on Amazon or number 1 on Amazon for the rest of your life just because you pumped up a few sales in 1 hour. And people are cottoning on to that, and it's not impressive to say number 1 on Amazon because everybody knows it's a bit of a farce. But I'm not talking about that. Now listen to this, Tina. This is the funny thing. I don't care if my clients never sell a single book. In fact, my most successful clients have never sold a single copy of their book. It's not about selling your book. This is my big, giant line. Are you ready for this, Tina?
I'm ready.
It's not about selling your book. It's about your book selling you.
Aha.
So yes, of course, you might make $10 selling a book. You sell 1,000 books, you make $10,000. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not poo-pooing that. However, if you're a realtor and you get a gig because you wrote a book, your commission might be $20,000. If you're a plumber and you wrote a book and you get on radio and television and you get thousands of phone calls and get lots of gigs, that might increase your income from $70,000 a year to $140,000 a year. That's a lot better than selling a few copies of the book. So I'm not into the game of pretending that you hit number one on Amazon in some tiny category. I'm not interested in that. I don't tell people how to sell their book. I teach people how the book can sell them.
Perfect. Yeah, because it's a huge credibility builder.
It's gigantic.
Yeah. All right. Well, now let's circle back around. And I'm so glad that you right up front kind of like started off with sharing all of the failures that you have, because one of the goals here for our tribe is to take all of the charge out of the word failure and to kind of, because we're all going to experience it, and it's, always a huge learning experience. It can really shape what we've done. Now, you shared a few things at the top of the interview about some of your failures, but let's talk now a little bit about what you learned from some of those failures that may have informed or shaped what ultimately has led to your enormous success.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. Let's first refer to Sir Winston Churchill. And he said, success is lurching from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Now, I have to confess, I haven't got to that level. When I fail, I say, oh, darn, or words like that for a short period of time. But I do kind of grovel in the unpleasantness of the failure for a while, but I get out of it really fast, really fast, into like a day or two or an hour or two, no matter how much I've lost. And that's one thing I've learned. But the most important thing I've learned about failure is that failures are sent to us because there's a lesson we haven't learned yet. Failures aren't sent because God has decided to, okay, you're going to fail today, okay, you're going to be successful. Like, God doesn't go to casinos and roll the dice. Mm-hmm. God sends you failures because there's something you haven't yet learned. And so in all of those companies that I started, the lesson that I hadn't learned yet is that I didn't stand out in any way. When I started trying to sell foreign sports cars, I would go up to people and say, do you want to buy a foreign sports car? And they'd say no. And I'd say, oh, darn. Like, why should they? Who am I? Some kid graduated as a physicist wants to sell foreign sports cars. Why bother? Have I won a race? Have I invented something? Have I written a book on it? How do I stand out? Do I have a radio show? If I don't stand out in any way, why would anyone be interested? Coke is well branded. Raymond wasn't. When I tried to compete with Coke, Coke won, Raymond zero. And so it took me 17 years from university to age 39 before I finally gave up to realize something was wrong. And the very first coach that I hired, that my mother paid for because I was $100,000 in debt, he said to me, we got to brand you. And so I wrote a book, How to Make $1 Million in Real Estate. And as soon as I wrote that book, I was on radio and television. I was invited to be on stages across the country. And suddenly people wanted to buy from me. They didn't want to buy anything from me before. But the guy wrote a book on it. Oh, my gosh. How to Make $1 Million in Real Estate. Sure, I'll take your course. But I was the same person. As soon as I got branded. Well, here, let me give you an example. Is Dr. Phil the best therapist in the world? What do you think, Tina?
No. As a therapist myself, I can tell you no.
Okay, fine. But even if you're not a therapist, people typically have the opinion that he's not the best therapist in the world. However, he's the best branded therapist. Why? Because he's written 23 books and he's been on Oprah 100 times. So if Dr. Phil came to your city, he could probably sell 10,000 tickets at $100 each and make $1 million that night. But if actually the truly best therapist in the world came to your city, he'd be lucky to fill 11 seats in the basement of a church. Why?
Very true.
Because he's not branded.
True. Yeah.
That's the difference. And so it doesn't matter how good you are. It matters how well branded you are and how you're branded. And Tina, here's my favorite example of branding. Hershey's makes chocolates. And you can buy a pound of Hershey's chocolates for about $4. But Godiva makes chocolates. And equal weight, a pound of Godiva chocolates costs about $40. Why would anyone pay 10 times more for a pound of Godivas? And when I ask that question, people always say, it's better quality. And I say, oh, are you a chemist? They say, no. How do you know it's better quality? And they make something up. They say, oh, I'm sure of it. But the truth is, they have no idea whatsoever. They're basing it on brand. And here's the shocking realization. Hershey's is branded as a treat, and Godiva is branded as a gift. You'll pay $40 for a gift, and you'll pay $4 for a treat. When is the last time you bought a $40 box of Godivas and ate it on the way home? Nobody does. It's even hilarious to think of it. And that's branding. That's branding.
Exactly. Although in the example you used, I have a few friends out there who are probably listening to that who are blushing right now because they know they've done that with the Godivas. But chocolate fanatics. But you're right. It's all about the positioning.
Yes.
And the branding of it. Well, then let's talk about, you've been a big risk taker. You've been, extremely tenacious. And I would probably even say, you've ever been accused of being stubborn?
No, not stubborn.
No, really?
No,
okay. Because I was going to say anybody who has done what you have done and failed as many times as you have failed is really got to have some tremendous capacity for that. So but out of all the things that you've done, what is the biggest business risk you think you've ever taken?
Well, first, let's go back to stubborn. Stubborn has the negative connotation that you don't listen to anybody and you don't learn from your own issues. You just keep going even if the universe is bashing you on the head. So I will say that I am extremely persistent, and I will say that I don't give up, but I won't say that I'm stubborn, because when I realize something isn't working, I give it up really fast. And so let me tell you the biggest risk. I met a woman who is easily the craziest woman on the planet. Her name is Jan. Her first name is Jan, Jan. And I met her because I was in Barbados on a vacation while I was writing a book, Chicken Soup for the Parent's Soul. And I read in the local Barbados newspaper that Jan Meek had just arrived in Barbados. I said, well, so big deal. I just arrived today, too. But she arrived using a very different transportation device. She crossed the Atlantic Ocean from Africa in a rowboat. In a rowboat. A rowboat. And she crossed the Atlantic Ocean in a rowboat with her son. And I said, I'm writing Chicken Soup for the Parent's Soul. Here is a mother-son story. I phoned every hotel in all of Barbados till I found her. I became dear friends with her. She's the craziest lady I've ever met. She's in the Guinness Book of Records as the oldest woman ever to cross an ocean. And then she realized that the oldest woman ever to cross two oceans was 10 years older, 62 years old. And I'm the same age as her. So she called me when we were both 60 years old and said, I need to cross another ocean. I said, why? I want to get in the Guinness Book of Records again. I said, okay, good luck to you. And she said, how would you like to tie for last racing to the North Pole? I said, tie for last with who? She said, with me. She said, I'm going to race to the North Pole. I said, you're loony. And she said, it's a 350-mile, month-long foot race to the North Pole. And I said, you know what, Jan? I'll do it. And so from age 60 to age 62, I trained for 1 hour to 10 hours a day. I want to make sure you heard me. 1 hour a day up to 10 hours a day for 2 years from age 60 to age 62 to get ready for polar race. That's average temperature minus 40 degrees, hauling a 100-pound sled behind me with all my provisions, dodging polar bears. And I started it and I finished it. I'm now one of several dozen people in the entire world who's ever been to the North Pole under my own efforts. That was the toughest thing I ever did in my life. I was racing from 10 hours to 14 hours a day for a month, and I got to the North Pole. That is.
How did your close friends and family feel like when you were in the process of this?
Well, never mind in the process. In the week or two leading up to my flight to Resolute Bay, which is the northernmost human settlement in North America, from whence we left and went straight north. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, my friends and family and my partner and my employees were all freaking. My partner actually grabbed me, threw me in my office, slammed the door shut, and said, don't you dare go. You'll die and we'll all be out of work. I mean, they were all frightening me to death.
Oh, wow.
And then on the morning of my flight to Resolute Bay, on the very morning, my sister held what appeared anonymously to be called a goodbye party. And one of my cousins said to me, Raymond, are you sure you're ready? I said, how would I know? I've never raced the North Pole before. How can I possibly know if I'm ready? But I told you, I trained an hour to 10 hours a day. Usually when people go to a gym, they pretend they're training for 40 minutes, but they're actually looking at pretty girls' bums for half the time, and then they're at the water fountain for the other half of the time, and they're doing almost no exercise. But I mean hard training for an hour to 10 hours a day. In fact, the 10 hours, you'll be interested in this, I lived in a 10-story condo tower, and I raced from the sub-basement to the penthouse and back down. That's 10 flights up and down. And then up to the penthouse and back down. That's 20. And then up to the penthouse and back down. That's 30. And I did that until I had climbed up and down 1,000 stories of stairs.
Wow.
It took 10 hours nonstop at age 62.
Woo.
And in all that 10 hours, I never saw a single person in the stairwell, and my fear was that I would die or have a heart attack and lie there for months before anyone found me.
Oh, no. Jeez. Wow. So they basically tried to give you almost like a funeral before you even left, huh?
You got it.
Uh-huh.
So
all right.
that is the goofiest, scariest, riskiest thing I ever did. But I don't perceive that starting businesses now is risky, because I tell my clients, don't you dare start a business until you've already previously written a book on it. And that always mystifies them. They say, but Raymond, after 3 years, I'll know a lot about the business. I say, good, write a sequel by then. But why would you want to start a business unbranded and struggle for 3 years?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point about it. And yet people deal with that whole psychology around imposter syndrome and all of that. But if you're going to go into a business that you can't actually speak about or aren't willing to learn about or know nothing about, why would you pursue it?
Well, let's talk about imposter. One of the rules that I impose on my clients when they write a book is the total amount of time I allow you to do research is 0. Because if you do research, you're writing someone else's book. You're not writing your book. So I tell my clients to write what they know, so they're not an imposter. You're writing about what you know. If you're writing about being a realtor or a plumber or being a dentist, or you're writing about how to overcome certain issues, you just write about your own experience. You can't be an imposter. You're telling people who you are.
You can't be inauthentic doing that.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot more sense than the other way around, for sure. All right. Well, what about one of your favorite moments in your business ventures? A moment of brilliance or a decision that you made that made a big difference in your results and your success?
I think the biggest, most startling event in my life had to do with branding. I was sitting in business class on an airplane. There was an empty seat beside me, and just as they were shutting the door, some big, fat, sloppily dressed guy came flying in and plunked himself down right beside me. And I said to myself, I hope he doesn't want to speak to me because I just want to have a break. And he said, what's your name? And I said, oh, gosh, a talker. And I said, Raymond. He said, what do you do? I help you double your income doing what you love. No kidding. Do you have a card? No. You don't have a card. You're sitting in business class and you don't have a card. I said, no, I have a book. He said, I don't want a book. I just want a card. I don't have a card. I have a book. He said, what's your book? Double your income doing what you love. Guy says, no kidding. And I had one on my briefcase. I gave it to him. And he said something to me that I never wanted any man to ever say to me. He said, do me. I said, what? What do you mean? He says, come on, we're on a long flight, double my income doing what I love. And I just wanted to get rid of the guy. So I sneered at him and I said, sir, I charge for it. I figured that'll shut him up. And he said, how much? I said, oh, for gosh sakes. I said, okay, $5,000 for a 50-minute hour. And he said, you take Visa? I said, I'm on an airplane. I couldn't get rid of this guy. He was throwing money at me. And finally, he gave me his credit card number. I wrote it down. I started talking to him, and before the 50 minutes is up, he said, I've learned more from you about branding and about how branding can increase my wealth than I ever could have believed I could have learned. Thank you very much. Let's watch a movie, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. And what I learned was that I didn't sell that $5,000 consulting gig on the airplane. The book sold it. I was trying to get rid of the guy. But as clever as I am, I could not turn him off as much as the book was turning him on. If I, for example, had said to him, come on, give me $5,000, I'll get you rich, he would have called over the flight attendant and had me evicted. But no matter how much I tried to turn him down and turn him off and sneer at him and be rude to him, the book was so compelling that he forced his $5,000 on me. Now, I'm not boasting about making $5,000, but the shocking thing was to me, you don't have to be a great salesperson. You don't even have to be any more than just good at your profession, and a book or some other kind of branding will throw money at you.
Wow. Okay. So in our backstage pass today, we're definitely going to dig into this a little bit more, because I can hear everyone listening kind of sitting on the edge of their seat saying, okay, well, that sounds like something I want to do. So before we get to the backstage pass, though, last question today. If you were just starting out today and you had your knowledge but not the resources that you've developed over the years, what would be some of the first things you would do to start something today?
The only thing I would do is write a book. I asked my dearest friend, Dr. John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I said to him, if you could change one thing in your life, what would it be? And he said, I'd rather have a book than a PhD. I said, what? Are you crazy? He said, take it out for a spin. I said, what does that mean? He said, call a radio station and say, I have a PhD. Do you want to interview me? And everyone will say no. But if you say, hi, I wrote a book on, and they'll say, wow, a lot of our listeners are interested in that. Sure, come on our show. And so the ease of getting free publicity, therefore the ease of getting wildly known at a cost of zero, the ease of getting clients, the ease of collecting, all jumps up enormously when you're branded. And there's many ways to brand yourself, but the easiest one is writing a book. And the reason it works so well is because everybody thinks writing a book is tough. So if you can do something effortlessly that other people think is tough, then they get this giant amazement and they say, wow. And Tina, every time someone says wow about you, you're branded. And when they say wow the second time, your brand rises. And more people have said wow about Apple, the company, Apple Computers, than they have said wow about any other company. And that's why Apple Computers is the wealthiest company that ever existed. It just passed $700 billion net worth. Very first company in the universe to ever have a market capitalization over $700 billion.
Wow. I'm saying wow. Okay.
I know, just because everyone says wow.
They sure do.
I mean,
they sure do. All right. Well, I think we should keep saying wow. And Raymond, thank you so much for joining me here on the Start Something Show today. We are going to take this and get even more into depth on branding and books, wealth building, and all of this other wonderful information that Raymond Aaron has to offer. Remember to go back to his website at aaron.com and download the book and look at the art, read the articles, and get involved in what he's doing over there, because it's some extraordinary stuff. But in the meantime, super starters, join us over on the Backstage Pass with Raymond Aaron. Raymond, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
All right. We'll see you over soon.
Start something with purpose. Start something with freedom. Start something now. Go to thestartsomethingshow.com, join our community of super starters, and get your perfect day planner pack, a free resource to help you create the life you've dreamed of living. Take action now, and we'll see you for our next exciting episode.